Hi, I was asked a few times, how do I make my stopper knots that slide? And I wanted to show you really quick. I'm going to assume that you know how to tie the knots and that making the bracelet itself is not an issue. This is just about this sliding stopper knot. One of the things I try to do is try to duplicate the pattern over again in the knot. So when it closes up like that, it looks kind of almost seamless, depending on the knot itself. And you have all this stuff on the side. Like this one here is basically square knot, and with the stopper knot that matches the knot. Actually, it's made so that the colors are opposite, more of a contrast. This is another one where the stopper knot is the same as the bracelet design. Okay, so it just sits like that, and when you close it up, it looks nice and tight and neat. It doesn't stand out quite so much. This is another variation of the same idea. It's a different knot, but again with the stopper knot, and it almost looks invisible without seams because you use the same knot. And here's another one. This is just a basic square knot. This one came out really nice and clean. It opens up and slides closed like this. And it really, I like the way that these turn out like this. And you have these little ends on it for pulling it and adjusting it to make it fit however you want it to fit. So, just wanted to show you some of these and how I did them. And this is where, at the point at which I usually stop and make it a stopper knot. Put the stopper knot on. Now, the idea behind this is this is a 6.5 inch bracelet, so it's going to be 6.5 inches long, as you can see here on the tape measure, from 20 to 26.5. So we're going to put this up here, and this is time to trim it. This is where I started, so that I have 3 inches from the end to where the bracelet begins. So we have 3 inches of material here to work with. So what we're going to do is trim off the excess material that we used for holding onto it by fusing it. Like this. And you see, this is where we started. One of the things that I do is where I end, as you can see right in here, I've got plenty of material left over. This is a good 6 inches worth of material. This is so I have something to hold on to work with. And makes it a lot easier on my hands. This is a lot longer than I actually need, so that I could make this any kind of length, but I'm going to use this material that's left over for the stopper knot. Okay, so at 6.5 inches, we're done with this. So we're going to trim this off. Trim, fuse, and flatten it out. Both sides. There we go. Now these are the ends that I trimmed off. And you can see that they're already starting to fray. So we want to try to keep them from fraying. I don't know if you can see that. This doesn't focus very well when you get in close. But anyway, so we have to apply some heat there so they don't fray all over the place and it gets kind of messy. So now I'm assuming that you know how to do the basic square knot bracelet. And if you want to, I can show you how to do this in another video, but this is not the video that I want to use to show you this. So I just want to show you how to do the stopper knot. So what I do is I take both ends and I intertwine them so that they lay neatly together. You have to be neat about this. You can't just throw them in a bunch next to each other. I like to have them neat so that the slides a little bit nicer. See, we have the 4 strands just like that together, and then I clamp it down on my board. I know that some people like to pin this or tie it to something. I like to use a clipboard. And I can adjust and readjust as I go. Then I take the material that I finished with and I'm going to tie another square knot right there. Let me bring this more into the center of the screen here so we can see a little bit better what's going on. And this is going to start this as a regular square knot. And if you don't know how to do this, again, I'll do another detailed video on this one later. If you wish, I can do that. Just let me know what you would like. And I tie it around all 4 ends. Just kind of have to be careful how you do it so that it stays dressed up nice. It stays nice and even. Otherwise, if the strings get over top of each other, then they start getting tighter and friction, and it doesn't turn out the same and it doesn't look the same. It doesn't look as nice as these do with the strings coming out just nice and even like that. Okay, so now I've got the square knot in place. Now when you tighten this, don't just pull on the strings, okay? You kind of have to pull on both sides at the same time. Otherwise they right out. And you're going to have material left over on either side. We'll cut it and trim that later. And then we just continue tying the square knot here. Again, you got to be careful and keep it dressed nice and neat so that we don't get it tangled and it looks good. And the string slides evenly over top. One of the things that I like to do is when I make the bracelet, this is going to be from here to here is the circumference of a person's wrist, whoever's wrist this is for. And the slider knot is going to be an extra bit to make it so that it's not extremely tight. And one I found, let me put it that way, I have found that a 1/2 inch stopper knot works very nicely to give you enough slack so it can slide over somebody's wrist. You have enough room here and it tightens up without cutting off somebody's circulation. Okay? Now you'll see that this knot here is a little bit larger than the original bracelet knot, not just because you have 4 strands that you're tying over top of and not the 2 as in this one here. Okay? And we continue with the square knot until we have a 1/2 inch of square knot. We measure this every once in a while. We'll see that, okay, we're about 5/8, no, 3/8, 3/8, almost. All right. Yeah, almost a 1/2 inch. Maybe a couple more knots on it. And this, the 1/2 inch usually gives you the right amount of friction, the right amount of slack, and it'll look pretty good when it's done. And as you see, I have a lot of material here to work with. Don't be chintzy on your material. You could probably use it for something else later on down, months from now, when you try to do something. Oh, I want that color. Okay, you see from the 20 to the 1/2. If you can see that, it's a 1/2 inch. Now, you want to make sure it's tight enough, but not like super tight. Just tight enough. And we're going to do the same with this like we did with the bracelet knot, and trim it and splice and fuse it. Now when you're fusing it, you got to be a little bit careful, because if you heat it too much, you'll melt it to the cord inside, and then it won't move at all. It'll make things a little bit difficult. Then you got to break it free, and that's a whole nother problem. So we just heat it just enough so that it starts to melt. And you only want like a 1/16 of an inch of material sticking out there to fuse. And you have to be careful, because it's possible you can burn yourself doing this. And just understand that when you do, it happens. Now the easiest part that I found, when people say, well, how do you know that that's a 1/16 of an inch? Well, I have my scissors, and I measured the width of the blade of the scissors, and the width of the blade here is a 1/16 of an inch. I don't know why it's that way. It just happened to be that way. It makes life easy for me. When I measure, I just put the scissors up against the edge of the knot, so that where it cuts, see right where it cuts, is a 1/16 of an inch. Just like that. Heat it up. Don't set it on fire. As you see, I'm not sticking it in the flame. I'm just putting the flame underneath it, so that the heat melts material just a little bit, just enough, and then flatten it out so that it stays there. And you'll see it stays in place. And if you do it right, it's difficult to see. Now you have your slider, your basic of your slider knot. See, you have these two are sliding on the inside, and this one is sliding on the outside. And just pull on it, and it slides closed. And it's pretty close to being the same as the bracelet. Okay? The difference being it is a little wider because of the amount of material that you have in it. Now, one thing you want to do too is make sure that you bring and dress the string up right, so that the string comes out of the top on the outside. You don't want it coming this way. You want to make sure that it always comes out the side this way. Then what we do, where's that again? these knots on the end are just plain old everyday overhand knots to keep it from unwinding. And I like to make mine about 1.5 inches. As you can see, that's about 1.5 inches till the knot. And if you want to, you could do something fancy with it, do a fancy stopper knot, put some beads on it. But I have found that you need the 1.5 inches to be able to open this up wide enough so that it can fit over somebody's wrist or ankle. Understand? Because if you make it this shorter, it's not going to fit. They're not going to be able to. You're not going to be able to fit it over your top of your wrist or your ankle, and it's going to get stuck there. Okay. Now, what did I do with that other knot? Okay. Here it is. So we just pull it so that it's tight like that. So 1.5 inches, that's what we want. So we're going to measure this, and from the base of that, right there, where you see it, to 1.5 inches is right about there. I'm not exact science on this, and I can pretty much feel how the knot is going between my fingers and adjust it. Before I tighten it down, though, I remeasure it. Now, see, now it shifted. It's up to 2 inches, so I have to push it down a little bit more before I tighten it up all the way. 1.5 inches. And again, this is just a close. We're not using exact. Okay, so that's 1.5 inches. And I don't usually go to that with the tape measure for every single knot. Once you have a knot that's 1.5 inches off the bracelet, you can use that as your standard to measure the rest of the knots. And the idea behind that is that they all look the same. Okay, so we got that one there. This one here is just a basic overhand knot like that. And we hold it next to the other one. And we bring it in so that it looks like this. And you kind of have to use your fingers to adjust it. And then you tighten it up. There and there. See, they're sort of the same. It doesn't have to be exact. Sort of the same is good. The other side was a loop, so now we're going to cut that so we can tie knots, and we're just going to apply a little bit of heat to the end of the material so that it doesn't fray while you're working, because it will fray out, and you'll have a mess on your hands when you're trying to tie a knot with stuff that frays. Now, this is having been originally 3 inches of play. We put a 1/2 inch stopper knot on it, so now we have 2.5 inches to work with, and you need some material there to work with. Okay, now 2.5 inches is a little bit tight to get that, especially for my fingers. Okay, now if you want to, you can remeasure all you want and try to do it like that, or you can just hold all the strings together and then hold on to it and try to just adjust the knot so that it's the same length as the others. Like that. And now you have that one there. And you're going to take this last one and do the same thing with it. See how you need to have some material to hold on to when you're doing this. Okay, we slide it out a little bit there until it meets. And you're sliding this between your fingers and adjusting it as you go. So when you eventually tighten it up, they're pretty much the same length. Just about the same length. You can tighten it and move it around as you want it to make them match a little bit better. Now when you're done, this part, we're almost there. Don't worry, almost there. We take this, again, the width of the scissors is 1/16. That's how I measure that. Measure your scissors, make sure that they're the same. You heat it up and flatten it out so that this doesn't slide back through and your knot is secured there. And you're not going to lose any of the fray off the end, off the material on the end. And it's going to stay nice and clean and stay put. Just like that. Isn't that pretty? Okay, let me finish this off with these last two. Width of the scissor blade, trim, heat, flatten. Scissor blade, trim, heat, and flatten. Piece of cake, huh? And there, that's how that slider knot works. Okay? Now I want you to go ahead and try it yourself. When you make your bracelet, try to make a slider knot like this. If you have trouble with it, put a comment below, send me a direct message, whatever you want, get a hold of me, and I'll be glad to look at what you did and help you figure out how it may have gone wrong, or if you did a really good job, post a picture here, and I'd like for you to show off what you've done to make it look, to show everybody just how good of a job you can do and how easy this is. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found it informative. Please press like on the video. It's down there somewhere below the video here. If you haven't yet already, you can subscribe to the channel. Every once in a while I'll be putting out a video on how to do something, or something that I've done, or anything to do with Olivia Designs. And if you know anybody that's working on things like this and playing around with knots and stuff, please feel free to share this with them, and so that they know that they can look here for ideas and help too, because they would really appreciate it if you didn't keep it to yourself and you shared it with them. Okay, so there you go, the stopper knot. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching.